Over the years of beading, one of my favorite parts of beading is designing seaweed designs and looking at the flow of nature, looking at leaves and looking at how seaweed floats in the water. There's black seaweed and red ribbon seaweed. There's so many different varieties. We would make them for our vests and the top of our moccasins and mucklucks. One year I was making a couple for octopus bags, and I had a couple of designs out. And we had already made a couple as pins, so we would bead it, and then instead of sewing it on a vest, we had sewn a pin on the back, and that way you can take it off of different vests or jackets, or even pin it on your hat or baseball hat or your scarf, or put it on a rubber band, and it could be a ponytail holder. And so I was doing a set some years ago, and I'm a jewelry artist, and I was doing a lot of abalone and mother of pearl, and I had my hooks right by my side, and was working on an octopus bag, and that was the idea, the first stem of making seaweed earrings. Has been so fun. These are a beautiful example of me just drawing and having fun with the curves and repeating some dips. And after I had drawn this, I took to the liking, and tracing paper is one of my best friends because you can keep your design but still continue working with it and fine tuning, and then you can get the mirror image. So starting from this design, and I grab out the tracing paper and I do fast sketches, and that way I can look at the mirror image. A lot of the beading will have balance, although these are the opposite right now. When you put them together, you can start working with them. So here is an example. Like I'll just like turn them around. I'll think of colors, angles. If it was on an octopus leg, how many would fit? Do we want maybe them to stack? And then look at just doing that. You can see that we have a seaweed kind of flowing. So it's always fun to play with designs and looking at what comes. Like right there, there's a heart. I don't know, it's kind of upside down. So if I turn it around, you can see the heart that is the shape. You could bring it together, and now you have, that would be beautiful on a vest. Can you see the heart through there? I'm just going to pencil it in so you could see what I see. And then these lines right here, you would ignore those lines, and you would work, you'd just bead here and here. And you'd bead all the way from here to here. So you wouldn't bead the connecting. But there's a nice fun design to show how you can work with one pattern, how this one pattern can move into two different designs. From this pattern, I thought this would be a really good cuff. So we'll have a pair of earrings, and you could have them be opposite, or you can have them the same. You could have them going this direction, and maybe the earring finding going this way, or you could have them dangled down. And then the cuff, this could be the top or it could be the bottom. So those are examples of how you can work with seaweed designs. With our beading needle book, this design is an older seaweed design that I got inspiration on. I love how it balances, and I did try to use the traditional colors. Um, this was a starting project. So this was just showing how you do an outline. And you can do double, or you could even do 3 lines. There's so many variations. Sometimes you'll find fillers within it, or sometimes you'll just see them as an outline like this. One of my favorites. Um, so from this style, I wanted to make sure I showed some contemporary colors, and if you see a variation of beads just within the cream, there's a rounded bead, and then there's a funnel bead. We have some sparkly. I really like the 2 tones of the colors. I will show you how just beading and putting all your stuff in. This was from a previous project. And so I had all my beads together like this. And I was pulling more so from colors, putting colors together, and getting an idea. I'm like, do I like these colors together? This is pretty dark. Is that going to show up on the dark green? I also have this one that has more of the gold tones. And then I had this with this over here. And I was thinking the gold tones for a while. And then I have some antique Cheyenne pink. And then here's some really big sparkles that will be fun to put with the earrings and the cuff. So having your beads all over the place like this shows different colors and creativity. In my messes, I find so much inspiration. It's so fun. And so that's where these came from, the colors. So this is exactly the same way that we started the needle book. We have the wool and then the backing. And then I did the 2 needle, the same that we did over here. And now I'm going to work on the cuff. But my next step I wanted to show you is how to turn these into earrings. So that's going to be the next goal. It's turning these into earrings. Do you see them hanging this way or this way? That'll be fun. That'll be so much fun to look at. And I definitely want them long. Like it has to be, in my view, this point or to balance the weight, this point. One of the steps that we are going to be doing next is outlining around the beadwork. You can do that through just through guesstimating, cutting along the edge, or you can get a pencil and kind of sketch around. This one is erasable, so it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. You can follow the dips. And I'm just doing it very lightly. There are colored pencils. You can use a colored pencil if you like. And there we go. So there is the outline. Then I'm getting my sharpest scissors. I'm going to bring that closer so you can see the pencil mark. It's very light. I did it very lightly. And as I'm cutting on top of it, the beading edge that we're going to do. You're not going to see that. And I could always run my eraser over it, which I'll show you in a minute. So I'm cutting. I'm kind of following my beadwork. Also thinking about the edging. My scissors are sharper at this edge than the tip. So I'm just doing small cuts, short, small cuts. I'm cutting inside of the markings too. That's such a pretty pink. Kind of reminds me of cranberries, huckleberries. There we go. Looks pretty good. There's a point right there. Just gonna snip that point. We have some longer tails back here. Trim those. Looks pretty good. Now to do the next one. Oh, different pen. Different pencil. This one has a softer lead. Just very light. Very light. I need to get this a little closer. There. Kind of remind myself how close I am. There's a little turn right here. It kind of goes in a nice curve up. I'm turning the wool as I'm cutting. Short little cuts. And there's a nice turn here. Following that as I go. And then we don't want to get too close to that edge, so I know to turn. I'm going to put them together. I always save parts of it. It's one of the ways we started using remnants of our regalia to make smaller beading. They look pretty good. This one has a little point right there. I think we're going to round that a little. Looks good. Now, just like, which way should it go? You go wear them this way. I like that. I think that's the way we're going to go. You could wear them this way. That looks pretty too. Could wear them this way and or this way. So we'll do the next step. This is the wool that I use for tunics and moccasins and mucklucks. It's the Pendleton Woolen Mills. This is a really beautiful green, really soft teal green. This is a half a yard and it's $60 a yard. One thing about this kind of wool is it will support your beading. It doesn't have a stretch and it won't fray. So I use remnants of some of my sewing projects. I'll save all the little pieces for little earrings or cuffs. So here's you see that's like part of a remnant. One thing we need to do is have something to support her beading. And I have cardstock here. You could use other cardboard that you might find around the house, maybe from a cereal box or a cracker box. This one, I have this yellow that I use for some of my patterns. It's kind of very ridgy. You could hear it drying. You could hear my pencil. So I'm going to use that. Sunshine is going to be inside the earrings. And this just gives it a little extra support. So there's the template. Grab my scissors. And I'm going to cut inside the line. We want enough space that we can bead the edging. So it doesn't have to be like right on spot, just the innermost line. And if it's for a loved one, you could write you could put love, light, blessings. That could go inside their earring. So with this cardstock, we are going to just dab a little bit of glue to our earring, just on the inside of the seaweed. We want to stay away from the edges. That's where a lot of our beading is going. This is just some good old-fashioned tacky glue, all purpose. Just put that right there for a minute. And with this, love, light, and blessings, we can put that to support. There's still enough room. You can look at doing a little bit of trimming so you have some space. A little close. I'm just going to trim there. That's good. And do this side, just dabbing. And we have our other part. So from here, then we put a little bit of glue onto the other side. It looks like a lot, but it is just really thin. And I'm going to make sure I hold that on the edges. I'm finding a good place where it has coverage on both sides. And press. The first pair of earrings I didn't have anything in the between the front and the back. It was still good, but I wanted something to keep the form of the design. We're going to put this one right there. Press. Really get those together. Flip it over and press the back. Oh, I'm shaking the camera. And I'm just going to separate them. Trying to go between. And now we're going to follow this edge. And how I do that is I put this part of my scissors right up against the earring or the edge, whether it's a cuff or earring. And those small cuts, just ever so small. And then those turns, I really have to go slow. We're going to be beating the edge of our seaweed. I like to follow the design of the beading. Some will make shapes of the earring and then design. That's fun too. I do that too. But with the seaweed, I like them to just follow the design of this seaweed. And you can check. It's pretty good. Pretty. And for the next one, really following that edge. Now there they are. Next step, we have to choose a color to edge them in. When they say edging, this edging is next. What color should we do? There's this green, the soft sage green. There's I like that color too. And then and then another thing I have to pay attention is like how much beads do I have and how much would take up that space. This is really sparkly. It's like I used this for fireweed some years ago because now this is like, I think $12 now. That's pretty. So I have to think of the color and the shape. These ones are more on the square side. And when I do edging, I think I prefer a rounded bead. I'm thinking I like the way the seaweed dangles this way. So I'm thinking that's going to be the top and that's going to be the bottom. We'll see if that changes. I happen to have some green thread that goes with the green wool, and I did use some thread magic. And I'm going to start at the bottom. I do have this mat that looks so close to the beads. So I'm going to use some of the remnants. I cut a little heart out with the remnants of the wool, help with the contrast. And as you go along, you might see some things that you might need to trim, like that white popping out. There we go. What's going to happen is the beading is going to close the top and the bottom. And I'm going through just one because I want to hide that knot. So I have to get past everything. My thread keeps getting caught up on the table. And I'm going to start off with 3 beads, like we did with the needle book. Oh, there goes the beads. And I'm going 1 bead away. And I went through all 3, the front, the back, and the support. Go. I'm going to go through the last bead. Our thread's going out. And we're going to go right up. And I'm making sure that there's some room. And then now we're just doing 2 beads at a time. Bead away. I did use some thread magic on this. I did condition this. This is also a pre-wax thread. As you can see, I do a lot of beading in the car, and I'll put my projects on the dashboard or leave it on the seat, and the sun melted some of my wax thread. Thank goodness I caught it in time, so it's still good. One time my mom and I were on the road and we were beading, and we had a big spool of thread, and it was super hot. And when we came back, it was all melted. It was like almost a brand new spool. We're just laughing at it. I thought it was so funny. I could have made this shorter, so I had less to get tangled up on. I do like doubling my thread for the edging. I use the board to help push my needle through. If I hold on to this, that'll help. Yay. Whoop, there goes the beads. Just spilled the beads. Whoop, and I put 2 extra beads on there too. One bead away. No, phew. Just wrapped around the bead, the whole beading. Somewhere in there, I got the thread all twisted up, so I'm just going to hold that there. Looks pretty pretty. So I'm just going to keep doing the beading. You add 2 beads at a time, and you go 1 bead away, and then your thread coming out from the back, or in this case, the front of the beading, but it's at the back as I'm holding it. And you're going to go from the bottom and through. Now you're at the top of that bead and you add 2 more beads and a bead away. From the bottom, now you're at the top, and 2 beads at a time, a bead apart, and from the bottom of the bead to the top. And from the top, you add 2 more beads. And you jump a bead away, and you sew to the back, jump to the front with your needle, from the bottom to the top, 2 more beads, sew down a bead away, jump to the front, from the bottom of your bead, sew up. Now you add 2 more beads. We're going to do that all the way around. We are at the halfway point. Started here, and this is the top where the earring hook is going to go. So we need to create a space for that earring hook to connect to our earring. And I'm going to continue weaving, beading from this side to this side, which is just a couple of stitches. Looks like 2. So there's the middle. So from here to here, I'm going to create a loop. Let's see what 7 looks like. 7 beads. And you're going to skip the middle and go to the next one. That looks pretty good. You see there's just a tiny little loop for the earring binding to go through. I think that's it. So I have 7 beads. I'm going to jump over this middle one and go to the other side. From the top, go from the top of that bead. And I kind of turned it so I don't pierce the other stitch. And then I'm going to go down right next to that other stitch. And now I'm at the back. So my goal is to go up this bead and the next bead. Little tug. I'm going to follow these beads back. So now we'll have 4 strands. So we went over, going over, and I need to make sure I go down the bead. As you can see, I did. It's kind of going into the wall. There we go. So I need to finish that stitch. And now we go up the previous one, and it might be a little tight. There we go. Slowly pull at that. There we go. Now we have the loop for our binding, and we continue beading. Add 2 more beads. Go 1 bead one bead stitch away. That thread's like, you put me through so much. I'm gonna hold, creating tension, help it, guide it. There we go. Jump to the front from the bottom, go straight up through that bead, add 2 more beads, stitch 1 bead away, side by side, jump to the front, go from the bottom to the top, add 2 more beads, and we'll continue that all the way down. I made my thread really long thinking I would make it all the way, but I didn't. So now we need to change the thread out. And the way we do that is as we're adding our 2 beads, coming from the front, 1 bead away. The reason why I'm doing that is because we want the knot to be on this side, not the front. And from here, I'm going to make sure I'm not pulling on that too much. I definitely want to give that some space. I'm going to grab the needle. I'm going to go under the wool, and I'm going to go to the next. I'm going to backtrack so I can get to that stitch. From that stitch, pull slightly, not disturbing this. I don't want to pucker that. And then with that stitch, I'm going to go through it again and go through the loop. 1, 2, try to evenly pull that knot right up to that stitch. There's a knot. And it being close to the stitch helps hide it a little. That's my theory, at least. And then from there, I'm going to go right to where that knot is in that stitch. And all I'm doing is traveling, doesn't matter where, just traveling away from it. I didn't go through the front. I just went through the 1 layer of the wool. And then pull that. I could work with this a little bit more. And then from there, I'm going to cut as close as I can to that wool without cutting the wool. And then our tail has disappeared. So I threaded my needle and I conditioned it. And I'm going to go through. So I know I need to start right there. Looking at, making sure, okay, we came from the front to the back. So it's the back that needs to be secured. So I'm going to hide my knot in between the front and the back. I'm going to put my starting point right there. And from there, there's the knot. Push that down. And now it's hidden. Yay! Then I continue beading, going from the bottom of the previous bead. Now I'm going to add 2 more beads. Beads just love flying everywhere. Like the funnest part is getting up. And then 1 bead away. And jump back to the back. Go from the bottom of the bead. And now we add 2 more. One way you can take 2 beads at a time from your hank of beads These were already loose, so I'm using the loose beads. I'm really, really good about making bead soup. Mixing my beads all the time. Sometimes the hanks, they just fall off, or sometimes I'll have them in little tubes or sandwich bags. So many, and so many different colors and styles and sizes. That's the fun part about bead soup, though, is like you see colors together that you wouldn't even think of beading together. Did I create a knot? Oh, I sure did. I gotta figure that out. So I discovered a little knot here. So I'm just trying to figure out if I could pull it out, and I did. I grabbed it with my pin. One bead away. I wonder if it's because it got melted that it's so knotty. I have to use everything that I have. I can't waste this. But I wonder if it melting affected behavior. It's not brittle. Definitely not brittle. It's still very, very, very strong. It is on the drier side. It's not as silky. This one feels very silky. Part of beading. I probably put way too much thread on this needle, considering the distance. But there's nothing worse than being towards the end and having like this much thread to work with. Done that so many times. I'm getting closer to the end. Looks like we might make it. Let's see. It's one bead. We don't want to overcrowd them. So at the ending, you have to determine. That's definitely very close. So I don't think there's a stitch in there, but we can try to merge these closer together. So this was the bead that we started on right here. This is the bead we're ending on. The thread is coming out of that bead. We're not going to go from the bottom of this bead. We only have one bead on this needle. We're not going to go from the bottom to the top. We're going to go from the top to the bottom to close. So I'm going to flip this over. I'm going to work with the first bead going from the top to the bottom. I have one bead on my thread. I think that was a good choice. It merged really nicely. Didn't overcrowd them. And then from here, I am going to secure that stitch. Go through, might take closer to the top. There we go. And exactly, see there's that stitch. I'm going to go right next to it. Now I'm at the back and I need to close this with a knot. There's my previous stitch going under it. Right there. And putting some tension on that because that's a lot of thread to work with. I'm going to go through the loop 1, 2 times without tangling. I'm as close to the edge, the beginning, making sure I don't have a tangle everywhere. Okay. Pulling there. Phew. And then there's my knot right there. So I'm going to go as close to that knot as possible. And I'm just going to run my needle on the top layer. You could feel the backing. We don't want to go to the front. Just going on the top layer of the wool and pulling. And then we're grabbing our scissors and we're cutting as close to that without cutting the wool. And now it disappears. And there's our first earring. Now the second one.